Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network. Hi, welcome back, everyone. I've said this before, and I'm going to say it again because I really mean it. He is a lifeline for a lot of parents who are having challenges with their children. And that's because he spent many, many years as a school psychologist in California. Not only does he offer insight for parents to navigate some challenging waters there as a parent, but also those who are looking to get into the field that he is in. And we're going to look at some emails that we've got from listeners as we introduce him. So great to have him back with us. Good Advice Helps with Dr. Allan Gold on the program once again. How are you doing today?
Okay, good to see you. Thank you.
You too. And we're thinking about it before. We've worked on, notice I include myself in that, we've worked on, you're doing all the work, on some pretty challenging things that parents go through. So I appreciate that, as do a lot of our listeners and viewers, because they continue to reach back in. Can we go right to it? Because we have an email now from a dad who's got some concern.
Sure.
And this is Derek, who's in Bangor, Maine. He says, my son is 10 and got into trouble for bullying another student, which shocked us. At home, we emphasize kindness, so we're confused and concerned. He goes on to say, what drives kids to bully, even when it doesn't align with what they were taught at home? That's an interesting point. I wonder how we're going to address that, and how can parents deal with this in a way that promotes real accountability and growth at the same time? Good.
I really appreciate this dad asking that question, because so many times it's the parent whose kid is being bullied is the one who brings it up, not the one whose kid is the bully. So I appreciate that. So bullying is extremely complicated. It can be. I think the first thing is to try to figure out what's causing this bullying and who was the kid being bullied. I won't say it's always true, but often it's takes two to tango. So who knows if the kid that this kid was bullying may have bullied him, may have said something negative or pushed him or excluded him or something. We don't know that. Maybe something was going on. This old expression, hurt people, which means that if you're being hurt by somebody, then one common reaction is to go hurt somebody else. We don't know if this child has an older sibling who may have been bullying. The fact that the dad said that this is not how they run their household, that they teach kindness, hopefully that wasn't the source of this, as a sibling being mean. But I think we really have to deconstruct what happened, what caused the bullying, and if the kid got in trouble, was this just with one other kid? Is he doing more to other kids? Is he feeling, not necessarily hurt by other people, but is he feeling like less than other people? Is he struggling with academics? Is he struggling with sports? Does he feel like the only way to, feel better about himself is to go after somebody else? So, there are many reasons for this. Also, who knows what he's observing among his peers? It's not so unusual for 10-year-olds to say not nice things about other kids. Does he want to be cool? Is he thinking that, well, if I bully somebody, I'm gonna, people are gonna look up to me or something like that. So who knows what's really going through his head? I think what would be a very important way to, and I've mentioned this before, is restorative justice, where he actually meets with the parents, with the other kid, with a school administrator or teacher, and really ask him what prompted this? What effect do you think this had on the other child? Without being punitive about it, but get him to acknowledge, yeah, I said that, and maybe I was trying to be funny or something. Who knows?
Mm.
Maybe the other kid was mean to him. We really don't know. I mean, because bullying can have lots of sources, but and then to ask him, okay, what do you think you can do to make amends for what you said, and including certainly apologies, but when I used to work with kids about apologizing, and I would say, well, how do you know that the other kid is really sorry? Um, and everybody would pretty much say, well, he won't do it again. And so to get this kid to recognize that this was the effect I had by saying these words, I think this might be why I did it. Maybe he doesn't even know why he did it. Maybe he saw it on television or
Mm.
a movie or something. And I've said before how this political administration, the head of it, is very apt to say awful things about other people, and that filters down to families. Again, I appreciate the fact that the values that the family is trying to communicate is we are kind to everybody, and we need more and more and more of that everywhere now. Um, so I think if he has any idea why he did this and can explain it, can apologize, maybe ask if the other kid was teasing him or something, he can admit that and say, it would be helpful if you didn't say those things to me. I apologize for doing it. I won't do it again, but I also expect being treated respectfully by you. Again, it's hard to totally answer it because we don't know what caused the bullying, but there are lots of steps that can be taken to uncover why this happened.
It almost sounds too like if you were at your desk and this came across it, you were presented with this challenge. Maybe an administrator brought it to your attention. Now the parents are involved. It sounds like you basically would be doing the same thing, and that is getting the facts, having to
Yeah,
put the pieces together so you can really get a better idea of what's going on. Because this Derek's son could be very chill, low key, and it was a one off. Something set him off. Somebody said something. Whatever he did, he did. Probably will never happen again. I'm going very hypothetical here, but we don't
yeah,
know
of
because we
course.
don't have the
We don't know.
pieces.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We don't have all the pieces. Yeah. So that all of the, behavior among kids, it is like a jigsaw puzzle that you have to find the pieces because you don't
Mm.
really know. And it's good when a kid has some insight, some self-reflection, and at 10 years old, that's begins to be possible. Much younger than that, kids don't know why they act the way they do.
Mm.
Um, and the older you get, the better the chances are that you can actually figure out and that somebody can admit, as long as you're not threatening horrible punishments to them. If you're doing that, you're going to be suspended from school or your parents are going to take away all your privileges. So that's why restorative justice is really a good process where it's not punishment that's the goal. It's really understanding, apologizing, finding a way to make up for the misbehavior to make the other person or people feel better.
You've mentioned restorative justice before. Can you just go over that again real quick?
Yeah, it's a way to deal with misbehavior, but the punishment isn't the goal. It's really understanding, expressing the reasons why the misbehavior happened, understanding how the misbehavior affects other people. Because if we develop some empathy and understanding, like, boy, when I say this other person felt really bad, or when I did that. Because often kids and even adults will engage in behaviors spontaneously without thinking, what's the effect of this? What are the effect of these words or these actions on other people? And and the restorative justice helps to restore the relationship between the two people by finding a way to apologize, but not just verbally, to, how can I, if this goes on between kids and parents, what can I do to help you out in the future? Um, so trying to find actions that will make the other person feel much better.
Final question and thought on discipline. Would you say many times you're not the biggest fan of detention, suspension, whether it's in school or not? There's other ways to deal with it. Maybe sometimes it has to be that
Sometimes it has
severe.
to be
Yeah.
if a kid really violates, like with physical
Hmm.
hurting somebody, that has to be. But often it's you're suspended, come back in 2 days, But it's the whole process that has to be worked through.
Well, yes, because what's the win there?
Yeah, right, exactly.
You did that. All right, you're suspended 3 days. Get out of here. Well,
Yeah,
you just gave the kid 3 days at home to play on their devices, chill out. Mom and dad are
right,
working. Can I get suspended?
exactly. It's not really solving the problem.
Yeah, it's not solving the problem. Maybe not the best punishment, if you will. And then, that I use that term very loosely. But there are things I think I shared with you once. My son was in middle school,
Yeah,
and he got suspended. Wow, I think it was in school, if I remember correctly, in school
they
suspension.
have in-school suspensions. Yeah,
And he was just goofing off with a very close friend, and the friend said, "I bet you can't hit me from where you are across the
yeah,
lunch table." And he said, "I think I can." "No, I don't think you can." He did, and the kid
yeah,
was fine, but somebody saw it, and right away, to your point, if there was a, some violence involved, even though it was kids just messing around, they both
yeah,
they both had in school suspension. But
yeah.
so we have another one here, and this is from Chelsea, who is in Rapid City, and says, "My child experienced a traumatic event last year, and while things seemed okay at first, now we're seeing changes. Withdrawal. Uh, so it's a girl. She's irritable, trouble concentrating at school. How does trauma show up differently over time in kids? And what do you suggest parents do for long-term support?" It does not say how old Chelsea's daughter is, though.
Yeah. Well, it's very interesting. Trauma can have its effects immediately or in the short term or over a very long period of time. I worked with a former student who was in his 30s, actually was a transgender student. And when she was young, she was sexually abused by a stepfather. And it was all coming out. It had been dormant for years. And it was a very traumatic thing when he realized that this had all happened. He needed a lot of therapy. So I think th that's the answer, is to
Mm.
really. And now I don't know if this kid is like 5 or 10 or 15, but anytime after, 6 or 7 or 8, if there's a trauma. Now we don't know what the trauma is. Was it an accident? Was it a death in the family? Was it physical abuse? Um, I mean, I wish I could address these emails with more definitive answers, but, not knowing exactly what happened. But if it seems like this child is really being affected by it, and we don't know how, often when a trauma happens, people kind of put it, put it aside and move on with their lives, but then it hasn't been dealt with, and it permeates your whole psychology, and it really builds up, and it
Mm.
does need to be dealt with. I mean, I've talked to, older adults who went through traumatic situations, and they've never really. I was just speaking to a friend of mine yesterday in his 70s and, on the phone, and he lives in Chicago, and he was telling me about some of his childhood experiences from his own parents and how it still affects him. Um,
Mm.
and and it's sad that that can't be dealt with. So I would strongly suggest that they talk to the girl, really convince her this was really terrible what happened to you, this trauma. People can work on them and feel better about them eventually, but you need some help with that. So I would certainly suggest finding a psychologist or psychiatrist who works with children,
Mm.
however old she is, who have experienced traumatic events. Because not all kids do, Um, kids experience all different kinds of things. But if trauma happens, um, it really needs to be dealt with. And we don't know what, I worked with a teacher whose daughter's 12-year-old friend had committed suicide. That's traumatic.
Mm.
It wasn't something directly, but so you never know exactly what the incident is, but for the child to talk about it and process it, not feel guilty about it, that can really help restore her herself. I mean, she may never forget it, I mean, obviously, horrible traumas, accidents, shootings, I mean, I still get texts all the time from the Sandy Hook, um,
Mm.
the murders, and asking for money. And people may need um, therapeutic assistance for much of their lives, because traumas are horrible. But
Challenging too as a parent because your child goes through the trauma and they seem okay. So as a parent, you might be thinking, I don't want to rock the boat. So I'm not going to
yeah,
engage them with a therapist. Things are all right. I don't want to go there again. Um, but what I'm getting from you is that probably therapy is a good idea, at least to talk to somebody and just kind of clear the air if it is. And if not, those things will come up, during a
yeah,
session.
right,
Mm.
right.
Um, I want to switch over to golden tools that you can use from Dr. Allan Gold. And you have one today that we've been holding on to, but it seems like it's going to be very impactful. What do we got?
Yes, it's I like to talk about anger management.
Mm.
I used to work with kids all the time who would blow up at, relatively minor things. And so I developed the strategy, and I'll tell you an amusing story about it at the end. But I would meet with kids, usually from about third grade on, and teach them this strategy if they would get mad. And usually it would, they were in trouble because they got mad at some kid, or they were mad at themselves because they didn't do well on a test or something, or playing sports. I said, I would start out, do you know how to rate things on a 1 to 10 scale? And most of them would say yes, and we would practice with some relatively benign things. Said, like, how much do you like broccoli? One would be, oh, I can't stand it. I'd throw up whenever I hear the word. And 10 is I could eat broccoli for every meal of every day of my life. And, they'd say, 4 or 5 or 6 or something. And it said, how much do you like to read? And one is you can't stand books, you hate them. 10 is I could have my nose in a book and read 20 all of my waking hours. And if kids would say a 10, um, I would try to correct them, because 10 means you wouldn't do anything else. That's all you would do. So whether it's football or soccer or math or reading or whatever it is, I
Mm.
would try to get them to, at least evaluate themselves in a reasonable way. Like if they really, really like something, 7 or 8 or something like that. Um, and then I would say, oh, how nervous do you get when you have to stand in front of your class and talk? One is I get so nervous I want to dig a hole and bury myself under it or in it. And 10 is, oh, I can get up and talk about anything. I don't even have a little tickle of nervousness. And then I would say, well, now I've got a very difficult question for you. What's the worst thing that you think could happen to you or anybody you loved? And many kids would say, well, they could die. I said, yes. Sometimes I'd have to lead them in that direction. So I say, let's say one is death, or a horrible accident, or a terrible, painful illness, or an awful natural disaster. Your whole house is wrecked or burnt down. Those would be ones or at best twos. And a 10 would be like a totally perfect day. Everything just goes wonderfully that day. And then I would ask them, now, on that scale, where would you put your friend ignoring you at recess? Or where would you put getting a B on your math test? Or where would you get not making any basket? Where would you put not making any baskets? And most kids would say, well, that's about a 4 or a 5 or a 6 or a 7. And I say, yeah, those are annoying things. They're disturbing things, but they're not horrible, horrible things like somebody dying. And the kids I would worry about the most is if they would say, well, that's a 2. And I would really try to work them to get a better perspective. And I'd ask them, I said, why do you think I'm trying to teach you this? And they weren't really sure. And I taught them the word perspective, that when something happens to us, it's really important to have, to put it in perspective, like how horrible really is this? And when something bad happens to you or somebody's teasing you or something like that, take 5 deep breaths, step aside and say, okay, how can I handle this in a way that's not blowing up? You could walk away. You could say to the person, when you say that to me, it really hurts my feelings. Please don't do that. Um, but it takes some time to think about it. But think about that 1 to 10 scale
Mm.
so that you can think about, well, nobody's dying. I'll find a better way to handle this. And I would tell them, when we're really, really angry, our brains don't work very well. We need to be calm a little bit to figure out other ways to handle those problems. And I would have kids try that. And I'll always remember a fourth grader who I met with him about 3 weeks later, and he said, and somebody, he would get really mad and even hit this kid who called him by his last name instead of his first name. And we went through this. Now, how horrible is that anyway? Uh, and he told me he was able to say, that hurts my feelings. Just call me by my first name, please.
Wow.
And it worked for him. And the amusing story of what happened to me, it was on November 30th of 2018. I was 72 years old. And I came home from school and my microwave wasn't working and I blew up. I was swearing and stomping up and down the stairs. And I said, Alan, why don't you listen to what you teach other kids? And so I calmed myself down. I had to buy a new microwave the next or day after that. But I was worried that I had to give a speech at my synagogue the next night, and I was afraid I would lose my voice. And since that, and I used to get mad at electronic things not working, when you don't have control over stuff and they'd go wrong. And, I would ask kids too about, do your parents ever blow up when they're driving and, somebody cuts in front of them or something like that? Anyway, so since that time, and it's been over 7 years now, I don't get angry very much anymore. I
Wow.
mean, there's things I can be angry about, sort of political things and stuff like that. But if something inconvenient happens, if I'm going to be a little bit late or traffic is stalled or my computer doesn't is not working the way it should, I just don't get angry anymore. And, but it took me all that time to listen to what I was teaching kids and not do
Wow.
it myself.
And do you find that as time goes on, now that you had that moment, that when things present, we all get triggered. It's like, oh, what? Are you kidding? Seriously? But you let it go much faster than maybe previously.
Yeah, yeah.
Mm.
And it's
Wow.
not like things don't happen to me that
Yeah, sure.
could make me angry, I think. And sometimes anger is totally appropriate, but how we handle it is also something we need to
Well, thank
deal
you.
with.
Thank you for sharing that. It's a wake up for us all. It doesn't matter what
Yeah,
age we
no, I
are.
think it's absolutely useful for adults as well.
Totally. And
You know,
I've always been a big proponent of the 10 scale in everything because it gives you a barometer. And that men's group I told you that I've been in for a couple of years, we call each other by our last names to honor our fathers, whether you were into them or not. And guess what we do before every single meeting? We do a check-in, and it's a
yeah,
scale. It's a scale of 1 to 10
to 10, how are you? Yeah, no, I
every
think it's
week.
very
The adults,
valuable.
men, we
Yeah,
do it.
no, it's very valuable. Yeah.
Very much so. Thank you for today. Lots of insight. Thank you everybody that reached out. Any questions you have, whether you're dealing with some challenges with your children or even looking to go down that road as a school psychologist, love to hear from you. Instant
Yeah,
feedback's key.
actually, I'll say for parents too, that anger scale is really important because parents often blow up at their kids over things that they don't really need to. I mean,
Hmm.
what are kids doing that is really what would be ones and twos on that scale or threes or fours, So
I think most parents can think back to 1 or 2 times where they blew up, even though it
yeah,
could be 5, 10, 20, 30 years later. I'm just
yeah,
saying. And
right.
it
Oh yeah, we
happens.
don't forget those
We
things.
don't,
Yeah.
and neither do our kids.
Yes.
Alan,
Okay.
thank you so much for today. Really appreciate it. Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
Hi, this is Terry Crews, actor, former football player, game show host, father of 5, and all-around big dude. I'm also an expert on drama. I know all kinds of drama. There's the good kind that comes with having a house full of kids. There's the bad kind like season-ending injuries. There's the necessary kind like having an agent in Hollywood. And there's silly drama like the drama around my percolating pectorals. And then there's the drama you can skip.
Skip the drama that comes with not having your high school diploma or equivalency. Find free adult education classes near you and finish your high school diploma. Visit finishyourdiploma.org.
Or text diploma to 97779. Message and data rates may apply. Reply STOP to opt out. That's diploma to 97779. And leave the drama to actors like me.
Brought to you by the Dollar General Literacy Foundation and the Ad Council.